Welcome to Books on Air. I'm Suzanne Harris. Books on Air is a series where we do a deep dive into the author's passion. We talk about why they wrote their book. We talk about what their writing process is like and what they hope their readers will take away from the book. You'll get a real glimpse behind the curtain, if you will. Joining me today is a wonderful, wonderful woman that I can't wait to introduce you to, as well as talk about her wonderful children's book. Her name is Natasha Burrell, and she's here to talk about her book, St. John the Ambulance Cat, and it's based on a true story. Natasha, welcome to Books on Air. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, Suzanne. Thank you for having me.
I love the backstory behind how St. John the Ambulance Cat came into being, because it's such a great story. Would you share that with our listeners?
Yes. Before I had children, I worked as a veterinarian in Otago, New Zealand, and the story of St. John was probably my favourite case as a veterinarian. It stuck with me, and last year I was asked to give a talk about being a vet to my daughter's school class. She's 8, and I decided to tell the story of St. John, and the kids really seemed to enjoy it. They asked some wonderful questions, like quite in-depth questions, and I sort of thought it went well enough that I thought it would be quite nice to try and turn the story into a book for children. It's a pretty amazing, kind of unique story, I think, and it's quite exciting to see it in print.
Had you ever written before?
No. And I have no training and no writing courses or anything like that. So it was it's been an interesting process.
It's quite an undertaking, isn't it?
Yes, it is. There's a lot more to it than I expected, to be honest. It's quite a process and quite a production, but it's been fun.
Well, you did such a terrific job, and I just love the book. Let's give our listeners an overview of St. John's story, and where did the name St. John come from for the cat?
St. John was a cat that was actually run over by an ambulance that was going to a call. I've simplified the story down to make it suitable for children, but basically I was on call. A phone call came in, and St. John was delivered to the clinic in an ambulance by the paramedics, and the book follows his veterinary treatment. He was reasonably badly injured, and he went through all his treatment, and then in the end was adopted by the paramedics. So pretty amazing. St. John is actually the ambulance service in New Zealand is actually the St. John Ambulance Service, and the staff at the veterinary clinic, we decided to call him St. John just because pretty unique having an animal delivered to you like that. So, yeah, it was pretty cool story.
You know, I used to be a teacher, and I can almost hear you standing up in front of a group of 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old children and starting to tell the story. And when you would say that the cat had been run over, I can almost hear them all go, "Oh!" Did they?
It was that was the hardest part, I think, to try and write that in a way that wasn't too confronting. To put that in a children's book was actually the bit I struggled with the most, how to do that. But then my daughter's at a rural school. Most the rural kids are pretty, they've all got lots of animals, pretty realise that things, can go wrong and do go wrong. And, they... I think one of the kids may have asked me straight away, is there a happy ending? So yes, yeah.
I think that this is quite a story. I tend to be a real fan of children's book authors. They're some of my very favorite authors, simply because when you have an idea, as you have, and you begin to think about how to put that idea down for children, you've already said it. It's not as easy as you think it is. The process of writing is a very interesting process. I've written several books myself, one fiction book that will never see the light of day, and several nonfiction books. And when you start to go into, you were attempting to fictionalize a real incident and put it into the context of a book that children could hear and could read and not have too much of a negative reaction to the situation that started a story off that was going to have a very happy ending. How difficult was it for you to sit down and try to fictionalize a real incident?
It was difficult just but at the start, and obviously in real life, the story was a lot more complicated. But I wanted the kids to feel that they understood the steps, especially the veterinary treatment steps. Like, I wanted to make it kind of truthful, but as simple as I could. I think the illustrators done a wonderful job of showing the care especially from the paramedics and things that this cat was given, and I hope that sort of overcomes the fact that the book starts with a wee serious incident and goes from there. But I also wanted it to be realistic. I mean, cats do get run over. It's quite a common thing, It's just I didn't want it to be, I'm not sure the word I'm looking for, but I didn't want it to be that bit to be glossed over, because, that's where it is where it all started. So.
Good. Yes, I think I agree with everything that you just said. And I admire you for looking at this and recognizing the importance of it. Do you think that there are themes that run through St. John? I mean, to me, one of the themes that runs through it is, now I'm a cat person too. I mean, I love cats. And I can see St. John in my mind. And so I'm a kind person, and I would want to rescue him, and I would want to take care of him. And are there some themes like that you feel that run through the book that young children will gather from it?
I'm hoping they'll get the feeling that caring and compassion for animals, I'm hoping that runs through the book. I was hoping to inspire children that, there is the possibility of becoming vets and caring for animals, and, the satisfaction when something has a happy ending and something goes well. But, excuse me, I also just personally thought it was amazing that the paramedics took the time to work things out so someone could rescue this cat, and that the human patient was seen. That was obviously the first priority, I suppose, as it was. But just even people, doing really busy jobs like that, still, cared enough to go out of their way to make sure this cat was okay and looked after.
I think it says a lot about that person and about the people who took, yeah. I just think it really does. I mean, you're right. They were in a difficult position and a difficult situation to begin with, and we both know that there could have been people who would have said, "Oh, that's just a cat. We have to hurry. We have to get this person to the," and they didn't. They took the time to scoop him up and get him his own medical care, and I just think that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. And I, like you, hope that the book encourages kids to think about becoming a veterinarian or in some way working in the veterinarian sciences, because I think why not? I mean, it's working with wonderful animals. What's not to love?
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Let's tell our listeners one more thing about children's books for me. They're very special, partly because they're children's books, and it's what happens with a children's book when it comes into a household. It becomes a memory, and parents will sit down, perhaps, or a bedtime story. Perhaps they sit down with their child and they read it as a bedtime story at night, and maybe they read half the book or a fourth of the book or 2 or 3 pages of the book a night. But St. John will become part of their nightly bedtime ritual for X number of days. And it may be that you have an older sibling that reads the book to a younger sibling, or you may have a grandparent who sits down with a grandchild on their lap and reads the book with the grandchild. Or there are so many scenarios that I put together in my head about how that book comes to life in the life of that child and in the life of those adults or those siblings or maybe even those friends when they sit down and read the book together. And it creates just that wonderful memory. And congratulations for writing a book that will live in their memory, because they will remember when their parent, their grandparent, their brother, their sister sat down with them and read this book. So that sort of, in my mind, immortalizes the book. And I have all kinds of soft focus memories, obviously, when I was young, and my dad particularly would read to me. And I just always think about that because I'm a former teacher, and so, of course, those kinds of things come into my mind. So thank you for writing a book like this.
I hope the kids, for me, get quite intrigued by the medical things and like maybe ask the grandparent or the parent, or why did they do this or why did they do that, and just start a discussion.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what will happen. And I'm sure we've teased our listeners enough with St. John. Let's tell them where they can find it. It's always on Amazon. And let me give you the specific name of the book again, and let me spell Natasha's last name for you. The name of the book is St. John, the Ambulance Cat, based on a true story, by Natasha, Natasha Burrell, Burrell. If you go to Amazon, you put that in, click on it, the book cover comes right up, and you'll see St. John in all his glory, his illustration, and you can buy the book right there. Now, Natasha, I know that often some of our listeners want to buy books other places, and there are a couple of other places that they can find St. John. Where else is the book available?
Through my website, natashaburrell.com. And also through the publisher, exlibris.co.nz.
I always like for the author to have the last word about their book, because it's your work, you wrote it, and I always think it's important that you get to say the last things about it. So when our listeners become readers, and they buy a copy of St. John, and they read it. However long it takes, they'll come to that last page, and they'll read the last page, and they'll close that back cover. What do you want the reader and the child, who is also the reader and the listener, to take away from this book?
I'd like them to, I suppose, have an understanding about caring and compassion for animals. But I'd also like to inspire some children to think about maybe becoming veterinarians or have a role in the veterinary animal care industry. I know a lot of children go through a stage when they're about 5 or 6 of wanting to be vets, and hopefully we can inspire a few to keep on going with that track. And but I just also want them to enjoy the book and enjoy the fact that there was a pretty happy ending there for everybody, firstly. So yeah.
And that St. John lives under another name happily ever after. I love that part, that the paramedic who saved him adopted him. I just think that's wonderful, and I couldn't agree with you more. I think that not only will children be inspired, but hopefully it will also get them to ask questions about how this all works. And, I'm sure that it will bring up some family discussions. And I just think that that's exactly what you want a children's book to do. Natasha, it's been such a pleasure to have you as my guest on Books on Air. Thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thank you very much for your time. That was good. Thank you.
Now, don't forget, you can find a copy of St. John, the Ambulance Cat, based on a true story by Natasha Burrell, on Amazon. You've been listening to Books on Air, brought to you on the webtalkradio.net platform. You can also hear this podcast on Apple, iHeartRadio, and Stitcher. Remember, keep reading, keep writing, and keep telling your stories. Thank you so very much for listening.